and we are back with another daily reflection on the Daily Vedantic. Today's reflection is on how to win, or said better, how to approach anything to give you the best shot at winning. Let's start with the biggest topic of them all. What do we ultimately want? What this philosophy says, and has said for thousands of years, is that what we want is freedom. And everything we're chasing in life is an attempt at getting that freedom. When we bring it to a more local level of our daily lives, what are the things that we pursue? Vedanta says that we are pursuing peace and prosperity, because that's what freedom is. It's both of those. Freedom from any constraint and freedom from any uncomfortable mental state. Peace and prosperity, that's what we want. And we don't just want one of these, we want both of them. Prosperity, but lack of peace. You're just chasing freedom from that inner conflict. Peace, but no prosperity, then you are constantly dealing with desires that outstrip your means. And when our desires outstrip our means, then that peace is fleeting. We fall back into a trap of, well, as one of my mentors, Naval Ravikant, puts it, man, I'd be a lot happier if I had X, Y, or Z. And desire becomes, in his words, a contract we sign with ourselves to be unhappy until we get what we want. So freedom is what we ultimately want. That's what gives us our happiness. Peace and prosperity ladder up to that freedom. That's what freedom actually is. It's both of those. If you want infinite freedom, then you want infinite peace, infinite prosperity. If you want some finite version, you chase a career milestone, you quell some desire for a significant other or a child, but we're just chasing peace and prosperity. So how to win? What does this philosophy say when it comes to the grandest pursuit of them all, peace and prosperity? And man, why not chuck in infinite peace and infinite prosperity into that equation as well? What does this philosophy say about that? Well, if you want peace and prosperity, the way to get it is to not think about yourself. In other words, the surefire way to cause agitation, according to Vedanta, is to pursue anything selfishly. Swami will say in the ashram all the time, show me one person that is truly happy and is selfish. Even John D. Rockefeller, when asked when he was the richest man on the planet how much money he wanted, he said, just a little bit more. So you can have more money than anyone else, more prosperity, and still not have that equation for feeling free, for happiness. Swami will also say, show me one unselfish person that isn't happy. So the route to destroy our pursuit of both peace and prosperity is, again, we want both. You don't want to be unhappy, just caught in conflict after conflict after conflict, multi-billionaire. You also don't want to have a sense of peace, but then worldly obligations catch up to you and, well, you're in debt. Your family can't afford medical care. And that's how not to win. Injecting them with any amount, much less a complete approach to a selfish benefit, selfish gain. Because that selfishness will agitate you. There is no peace to be found in selfishness. You might grow the bank account, but you will not grow the amount of peace that you have within yourself. In fact, that is the route to growing the amount of agitation we have within ourselves. So how do we win? How do we get peace and prosperity? Well, let's define peace and prosperity. I've said this before in episodes, but to say it again, peace is when your understanding supersedes your conflict. It's not the absence of conflict. Conflict on one level is harmony on another. You want your white blood cells to attack the bacteria, and you want to be able to take on a really hard task. That conflict can be there, but does your understanding supersede it? Do you understand that this conflict, yes, if I approach this, if I pursue this, if I push on this, there will be conflict, but that hard conversation at work is going to lead to harmony of a team that's performing better. On prosperity, it's do your means supersede your desires? And you can either grow your means or you can start to reduce your desires to where your means supersedes your desires. So peace and prosperity are functions of understanding and desire. Growing understanding and decreasing our desires. Because infinite desires will never get you to a place of feeling prosperous. And infinitesimal understanding will never get you to a place of peace. Which brings us to how to win. And notice that I'm not saying, how can I win? How can you win? But how to win. When we start thinking about how can I win, it sets up a very necessary separation between you and whoever you're competing with. Competition itself is separation. It's the pursuit of separation. And I'm all for competing in healthy ways to get better, competing against your own self of who you were yesterday, and distance of that separation in awareness and clarity from today than who you were yesterday. I'm all for that. But seeing the world in a competitive lens of how do I submit these other people under my dominance? Everything you do will become selfish. Because it is a zero-sum game. They can't win more than you for you to win in this competitive lens. But this philosophy is explicit. It does say that you can win. In fact, it lays out the only approach to win, to hit the mark on peace and prosperity, to reach that infinite freedom that comes from infinite peace, infinite prosperity. And that's the absolute extreme. It is the manual for reaching that extreme. I'll say in my own life, 10 years ago, I was running a startup, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, running it into the ground, running myself into the ground, not present mentally or even just physically to be there for those that I loved. Missed wedding after wedding, missed important date after important date with my girlfriend that would then become my wife. Completely unaware that I was getting in my own way. I mean, that is the common thread between philosophy, therapy, religion, is how do you avoid self-sabotage? There aren't many common threads between the three of those. But the one that does exist is inner reflection on whether it's philosophy, whether it's weekly therapy, whether it is church on Sundays. They're all designed to help us avoid self-sabotage. And I had no idea that I was sabotaging my own pursuit towards prosperity, really at the sake of peace. Now, fast forward 10 years and a couple companies, a couple hundred startup investments, and everything that I do becomes so effortless. Doesn't always succeed, but it is so much easier. And by far, each one of them has succeeded so much more than really anything I did in my 20s. And the momentum builds and builds. The energy sustains itself. Everything that I'm doing is generating energy versus working 7 days a week, working 70, 80 hours for 6 years, only to go through a fire sale of a company that 2 years in was valued at almost $400 million, starting from my bedroom in Dallas, Texas, to every major investor in Silicon Valley becoming an investor in what we're building, but ultimately ending with nothing and needing to start from scratch. Thank God. Nothing is the wrong words, because I got a PhD in life, in myself, in business. So it was absolutely invaluable. Suffering truly does lead to salvation for many of us. But it was a recognition of, I have no idea what I'm doing, and everything that I'm doing is backfiring. But the route to peace and prosperity, the route to winning, is actually a shift in the perspective. It's not, how do I win? Because any injection of the I, of what I'm going to get out of this, any thoughts of the fruits of what will come from your approach or your action will, as we touched on in a previous episode, corrupt the action itself. It cuts off the potential for the fruits of that action, cuts it off at the knees, if not completely annihilates it. But the difference between everything that I start today versus 10, 15 years ago is that it starts from a different question. Instead of how do I win, it's how do I serve? How can I be most uniquely useful to those around me? There's still a sense of I-ness, but there is a sense of, how can I take a duty-bound approach to being useful to those around me? And if your wiring is to build startups, then you're going to do it far better than, how do I capture value from the marketer, from customers? Instead, it's a flip to, how do I provide value to the wider marketplace, to the single customer that's on the other side of my table? It can sound like a platitude, but it is just how the universe works. When we switch from how can I win to how can I serve, the odds that you do win go up infinitely. That's today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.